Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the post-fight show on the Mandatory. If you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO, and you can also find us on the audio side. So if you got a couple of minutes, leave a rate and review. And it's hella early here on the West Coast. And I feel like that wasn't really the ending that we expected, but keep the comments coming because we are going to get to that. But Bryan, Naoya Inoue gets the job done against TJ Doheny. He stops him in the 7th round. A little bit of a weird stoppage because it was like, what really happened there? TJ Doheny looks like he may have pulled something in his back. Not the knockout we were looking for. I mean, I thought it would happen between rounds 1 through 6, maybe a great finish. That wasn't really what happened, but nonetheless, Inoue stays undefeated, and now the big question is he going to move up to 126 or is he going to stay at 122? But before we get into all that, keep the comments coming. Naoya Inoue gets it done, and my question to you to start this all off, Bryan, is what were your thoughts about the fight and Inoue's performance?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that ending in a second, but I thought in a way this was kind of what we expected. So in terms of expectations, we'll talk about betting real quick. Had the over, which is 3.5, moved up to 4.5, but took it at 3.5. Had in a way to score 2 knockdowns plus the over in a parlay that did not hit, but also had in a way to win between rounds 5 through 8. I talked about that a little bit. I did end up going there. He obviously did that, and that was plus 250, which was surprising to me. So felt like we'd get it in the middle rounds because TJ Doheny's toughness, craftiness, which is kind of what we saw play out. I was interested into like why he was doing what he was doing early on because I was like, hey man, I don't know if you want to. I understand it's a stylistic choice, but leaving your hands low when now your Inoue is in range for that straight right hand, even as a southpaw, it's a little tricky. But he was able to do that with I wouldn't say success because Inoue was still winning those rounds and those moments. But he was able to do that and not get killed early on in the fight, I guess is the point. And he, that was a success in that regard. In a way, also different approach, more tactical. Felt like against Lewis Neary, he came out like almost too relaxed and then got woken up and when he got dropped and kind of learned from that here. So it was a very tactical start on both sides. And then in a way starts picking it up. And then as he's picking it up, and this is where I want to toss it back to you, we get the weird stoppage at the end where TJ Doheny looked like an old man. Jokes already flying on social media. We're gonna put up some comments because there are already a few good ones. And keep them coming, please. But TJ Doheny basically is like, yeah, no mas. And it was we're not sure if it's because of Inoue. It looked like he was legitimately injured and couldn't move like that, but it was as Inoue was beginning to turn it up and look like he was going to get that finish any minute now.
Yeah, I think the most interesting part about this whole entire fight was the patience of Naoya Inoue because he was patient throughout the fight, and I think that Lewis Neary fight really had something to do with it, especially in that first round. He was giving TJ Doheny his respect. We know that Doheny has a nasty left hand; he does have power, but this was a fight, Bryan. When we go back to the betting, there wasn't a lot of value like going into this at all if you're going to bet on the money line. And then if you were going to bet in rounds 1 through 6, there still wasn't any value. It was like minus
Correct.
445 or something crazy. So I was
Yes.
looking at like what round he might win, and I was like, yo, it might be the 3rd round, might be the 4th round. This one goes into the 7th round. Now,
Yeah.
TJ Doheny, though, he actually fought pretty well in what he was trying to do, but I feel like Inoue was being very patient offensively and defensively. And I thought TJ Doheny was able, I think he had a pretty decent 3rd round, to be honest, but nonetheless, Inoue started to get into a rhythm, especially in that 6th round. And you saw Doheny start to drop his hands. He looked a little bit gassed. And we talked about early on before the fight started, you hit me up on my phone and you were like, yo, is his eye swollen already? And I thought the dude was just tired and he had bags or something like that. But then when they showed his previous fights, that's a spot where he gets touched up a lot. So maybe because he fought 4 months ago, it hadn't fully healed. I don't know.
Yeah.
But TJ Doheny even was starting to look a little bit red early on into that fight against Inoue, like after the first round. He was getting touched up. Regardless, that fight ended in such a weird way. Like, I don't know what it was. Inoue was landing body shots, and maybe he turned, like, he was obviously trying to be a little bit defensive and not let those body shots hit him. And maybe he just turned his back the wrong way and blew out his back. He's 37 years old. He's 37 years old. I'm not too far removed from 37, a few years younger. And I swear, like, I can get out of bed and I can pull something. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I'll pull a muscle in my sleep. You know what I mean? So I don't know what happened to TJ Doheny, but obviously Inoue gets the stoppage in a weird way. But nonetheless, like, it was still the accuracy. He was walking him down. He was controlling that entire fight. But I thought Doheny looked pretty good. Let's get to some comments, Brian, before we get into what's next from him. Yeah, go ahead. Do your thing.
Let me tell you what Tim Bradley had to say after the fight, which made me like laugh out loud. He said he hit me in the stomach and dislocated my back.
Yes. Yes, which is possible that could have happened too, because we know that Inoue has that power. Ryan Hong, friend of the show, Disco Night Baby. Usually Brian has a disco shirt.
That's an inside joke for people who've been following the show.
But he brought it back. He said, Brian, flex them guns for me, daddy. I can see you've been hitting the gym. Ryan Hong always bringing some of the best comments. TJ Strickland, hey, y'all. Thank you for joining us early this morning, guys. If you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel grow. Let's go over to podcast. A very weird ending, for sure. Like, that's not how I expected it to go. I didn't even expect it to go past the third round first. And then when it went to 6, I'm like, okay, he's got to get it done in the 6th. It gets done in the 7th. So if I'm betting, like, I'm pissed right now.
No,
you know what I mean? I'm like, what happened?
I had a good morning. We'll see what happens in the WNBA slate later, but had a good morning with the bets.
A lot of controversy going on right now too.
Yeah.
With a few things. Let's go to our Jay right here. Surprisingly, Doheny was better than most of the fighters Inoue fought. Brian, your thoughts on this comment? It's kind of a hot take.
I would agree with that. The thing that's interesting here is Luis Nery was successful because he had the knockdown, but he was kind of getting his ass whooped immediately after. Like, Inoue woke up and was like, nah, we're not doing that shit anymore, bro. Dominated the rest of the fight. Whereas I feel like Doheny, I have to look back and think, like, did he get any rounds? In the comments, did you give TJ Doheny any rounds? Let us know. I'd be curious to see.
I thought he had a good third round, but I don't know if I would like give him that round. Like, it could have been a swing round, like, because he was staying busy and he was able to land some shots on Inoue, but they weren't entirely clean. And Inoue was still being a little bit patient during that time. So I think maybe you could have gave him that third round, but
I think the point remains with Jay here. Like, yeah, Doheny probably more successful against Inoue than most. He did more against Inoue than Stephen Fulton did.
Oh my! I don't even want to talk about that Stephen Fulton fight. Like, it's probably one of the most disappointing fights I've ever seen in my entire life. And wow. That's not to put any hate on Stephen Fulton, but I think that's just how good Inoue was in that fight. Like, because I was going into that fight like, yo, I'm taking Fulton. Well, and I'm pretty sure there was a bunch of Americans along with me that were riding with Cool Boy Steph in that fight. I was riding hard for Cool Boy Steph, and I just left disappointed because he did nothing in that fight.
And that was the summer of Spence Crawford, where we were like, oh, look, boxing has multiple 50-50 fights. I think there was another one that summer that I'm trying to remember, but that was just a period.
Well, there was Ryan and Tank, but it wasn't necessarily 50-50, like 60-40.
That was like before that. Yeah. But that's a good point. But there were basically a bunch of fights, or not a bunch, but there were a few fights that year that were billed as 50-50 fights that did not turn out to be 50-50 fights. And unfortunately, Inoue and Fulton was one of them. This was not billed as a 50-50 fight at all. You mentioned Naoya Inoue was a big favorite before this, minus 5,000. It moved to minus 6,600. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing? Like, so literally TJ Doheny winning would have been the biggest upset in boxing in many years, maybe ever. Like, it was up there. I think Tyson Douglas was 42-1. Doheny was an underdog in that territory. So
I gotta say though, Inoue's entrance was pretty dope too. Like, I got
Yeah,
hype off
I
the
like all his
entrance.
entrances.
It's
I like all
sick.
his
Like, why would he
entrances.
not? Why would he ever fight outside of Japan
How
after
about
an entrance
this?
like that? 4 fights under 12 months is wild. That's the thing. We're gonna get into the pound for pound conversation as well quickly in this. It's hella early here on the West Coast. Like, I'm not trying to stay here for too long, y'all. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
But the fact that Inoue consistently stays busy, I think is so impressive because he's a superstar in this sport.
just over 12 months too. The 4 fights. So it goes back to Stephen Fulton, which would be the first of these 4, and that was July of 2023. I just looked it up real quickly, but yeah, still like this is a lot of activity we're seeing from Inoue, and there's talk of him potentially fighting again once more in December
It's
of this year.
crazy.
So
That's
and this is
crazy.
what I want. This is what I want. This is a top pound for pound guy, number 1, 2, or 3, however you rank them, and we'll probably get into that a little bit, who may fight 3 times in a year, which I love that, right? Top pound for pound guys don't typically do that. Canelo did
Canelo for a
pretty,
minute
yeah.
until he took a little bit of a break.
There's talk of
Because
him fighting in December, by the way, too, because he's already looking past his next opponent,
Canelo
which we're
stayed
going to talk
busy.
about
Like, I
next
don't.
week.
I'm surprised Jose's not here. Jose's a friend of the show. And by the way, if you donate to the show, we put your comment up right away and we shut up.
Let's go,
Tyrone, the
Tyrone.
great Tyrone, always donates to the show. Tyrone, good friend of the show. We appreciate you. How a body shot break your back? It's true. Right? Like, he could have broke his back. I said, did you see like TJ Doheny was like limping? I thought it was his ankle, his back. I had no idea what happened, but
I don't know if it was.
nonetheless, it was damage done by Inoue at some point.
Yeah, I want some clarity on that situation. Hopefully, it's not a serious injury, and TJ Doheny lives to fight another day. People are going to say maybe he should retire. He just got a big payday. He's up there in age, getting closer to 40 now, so to speak. But I think he'll probably. I would think he'll probably keep going. I don't think his stock, by the way, takes a big hit off of this. Like, I think he could make money off of this performance, given that. Like, not that he pushed Inoue necessarily, but
He fought really well against him.
he gave a decent enough account where I think we're gonna be like, hey, TJ Doheny, like if he fought Louis Neri next, I'd be interested in that fight.
That actually be a tough fight, I
Yeah.
feel like, for Louis Neri.
Both sides, yeah.
All right, so let's get to some more comments here. By the way, Tyrone, once again, thank you for donating to the show. We appreciate you, Tyrone. Good friend of the show. Okay, so this is interesting. We put this comment up before, but not the ending we all wanted from Hustle Man. And you can see the disappointment on Inoue's face. I mean, he's still undefeated. And we don't know if those body punches made Doheny twist and turn in a weird way, but regardless, you know what I mean? Like, something happened to his back.
I don't, by the way, I don't mean to laugh at, I'm not laughing at TJ Doheny. It's just funny. Like, it's just funny. Like, I'm thinking about what Tim Bradley said about how you get punched in the stomach and hurt in the back or whatever. It's just funny to think about. But TJ Doheny, like, listen, that was a better performance, and I think he outperformed what a lot of people's expectations were.
For sure.
Fight, so
I think that was really surprising. Like, if you talk to anybody, even Tim Bradley on the broadcast was like, I thought this was going to be done in like 3 rounds. He didn't even expect the fight to go that long. Alfred Miller, did Inoue just break his back? I think Tim Bradley thought he did it through his stomach. Let's get to Raybox. Inoue made Doheny a gymnast, but his body is not made for it. Yeah, I mean, that was such a weird finish. Makeshift 23. I don't care who Inoue fights next. I just hope Nakatani unifies the bantamweight division and moves up to super bantamweight in time to have a mega fight with Inoue. We are going to get to that. Let's get to a couple more comments, Brian, and then move on. This is really interesting. Let me tell you something about Ryan. He has predicted an upset before. Ryan says, I swear to God, I think Sam Goodman beats Inoue.
Forgetting what the upset was, but he did call. It was a recent one too.
Yeah,
Ryan,
and
let us know in the comments what was the upset you called. I'm trying to remember what it was.
It was a good one. It was a really good upset. I remember Ryan called it. Hustle Man not feeling it though. Ryan, what are you smoking? Friend of the show, Hustle Man, by the way.
Yeah.
Tony Montana, when
sciatica strikes, you can't move at all. I don't know about that yet in my life. Guys are asking about Casemiro.
I I said that on a video not
Chat
too
is
long
great
ago.
today.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
for joining us this morning.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you all. Donate, and we are gonna get to real quick because we got to talk about what's next. And
Yes.
in a way, I mean, we'll see. But what's next after? I guess knocking out TJ Doheny. Look, he got the TKO, so we'll phrase it this way. But I think people are gonna want Ahmadallah. People are going to want Sam Goodman. I think those are probably the primary two names. I think more people are going to want like Nakatani. I don't feel like we're at that stage yet, because Nakatani is probably still going to have another fight or two before they eventually do that, if that happens. But what is your preference here? I feel like I'm at like, all right, give me Sam Goodman or Ahmadallah at this point.
That's the only two options I think for him to fight at 122, because people mentioned Casemiro, and that was a fight that was supposed to happen. There's some like bad blood there, I guess you could
Oh,
say.
I'll take that one too, by the way. Like,
But
I'm
but
fine
when
with
I
that.
said it in a video, people were like, "Yo, he would wash Casemiro. Like, we don't want to see that fight anymore."
He would.
But
That's true.
nonetheless, I think people would watch it. I just think there's two fights, because Akhmadaliev, if that was a fight that was supposed to happen, he ended up losing, right? And Marlon Tapales beat him, and that was a fight where Akhmadaliev wasn't supposed to lose that fight.
Mhm.
So I think that's a fight that should still happen, but I thought that fight would happen before TJ Doheny. I didn't think the Doheny fight would even happen. But listen, it didn't happen. So it's either him or Sam Goodman. Those are the two options. And then I think next year, if Inoue does fight again in December, which is a possibility because he stays busy, if he fights Akhmadaliev or Sam Goodman, then that's great. If he doesn't, I don't even care. Like, those two fights aren't going to build his legacy, right? Him moving to 126 pounds. And I don't know if I see him moving to 130. Like, I see him moving to 126 though, but I think there's some really good fights at 126. But it's either Akhmadaliev or Sam Goodman, but I think Inoue can do whatever he wants at this point. And if he doesn't fight either of those two, I wouldn't even care. He can move up to 126 tomorrow, and I'd be okay with it. What are your thoughts, Brian?
I don't think he's going to move up to 126 next fight. That's just a guess.
It's next year. It's next year where it's rumored that he's going to move up. So one more fight at 122 for sure.
I agree with Alan in the comments. And Alfred also says something very similar. I don't think Goodman has power to keep Inoue honest. And over here, Goodman lacks power. Inoue would be all over him. I do worry about that with Sam Goodman. I don't think Sam Goodman would be a big-time threat against Naoya Inoue because of that. And just in general, I think Inoue is just better. But I think because of what he's done, like his body of work, he's probably earned an Inoue fight more than most in this weight class. So I think that's somebody you could look at. But at the same time, like I don't think he needs a Sam Goodman fight. I think more people would rather see Akhmadaliev. I think even more people would rather see Nakatani. There was a comment in the chat that mentioned Shushu Carrington, which I don't think that's going to happen next. But I see Top Rank is kind of like,
I wouldn't be mad at it though, yo. Like if Shushu and Inoue fought, like I'm not mad at that fight actually. I'd rather see that than him and Sam Goodman.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. So if we're talking about who we'd rather see, I'd rather see Inoue fight Shushu Carrington over basically anybody except Nakatani at this point.
Akhmadaliev and him is a good fight.
And Akhmadaliev probably.
Because I feel like that fight was supposed to happen. So as a boxing fan, I'm like, okay, I want to be mad at that. We're talking a lot about Nakatani. I think there's some time before we get that mega fight. And I've mentioned this before. I think there's more of a chance we get Bam Rodriguez and Nakatani before we get Nakatani and Inoue. That's just how I see it.
So Shushu's going to be in New York City again in September. So later this month, I may try to go out to that fight in person. That's the Sandy Ryan, Michaela Mayer card at the end of the month here. MSG Theater, which obviously is, not far from me at all. It's just a train. And I was there when he fought in his last fight. This was in June on the Xander Zayas card. And Xander Zayas is actually going to be on this card too. Just Michaela Mayer and Sandy Ryan are in the main event. So Last time, and this was kind of a big deal, Inoue was there in person to see Shushu Carrington fight. Did an interview on the Top Rank desk. He's not yet a featherweight, but there's a world like I could see this scenario playing out where Inoue, the fight gets announced next month or so. Like, hey, it's gonna be back December. Maybe it's Tokyo Dome again, but he's gonna be back and fights. And the way he looked after this fight, it would have surprised me that he's back right in December fighting again. Fights against Ahmed Aliyev or Sam Goodman, somebody like that. Maybe Casemiro, but let's say Ahmed Aliyev for all intents and purposes, and then announces the move up to featherweight and fights like, one of the champions and then defends against Bruce Carrington. Like, I feel like Bruce Carrington's maybe a couple fights away, a fight or two away, because even his next opponent, like, it's somebody that Carrington, like, it's going to be a showcase fight. So he's not yet a champion, but I do think that fight, as long as both remain affiliated with Top Rank, I would expect that to happen at some point. That's just an educated guess.
The chat is pretty interesting because I think people are interested in Shushu. But when you take a look at who's in this division for 122 pounds, Inoue can do whatever he wants. And I think you're right, because I think he was so disappointed in how that fight finished, because it was weird, that he'll be back in December for sure. Because I think the fans as well were kind of left being like, this guy is supposed to be pound for pound number one. And
as he was turning it up.
And so you're kind of left disappointed, because at the same time, we all knew what was going to happen. We were waiting for it. Yeah. Right. And it didn't happen that way. But at the same time, like, the way he fought, it was a very different fight. He didn't come out extremely aggressive. He came out giving TJ Doheny respect. He was good defensively. Offensively, we know what Inoue does. Here's the question to you, though, because this is always a topic of discussion and we have to talk about it. Do you still rank Inoue number 1 or number 2 pound for pound on the pound for pound list? Where do you have him after this fight? Because it's always what you did last.
I had Crawford first, and then I said after his last fight.
Did you still have him number 1?
So I told you, I was like, I'm going to wait till after the Inoue fight to adjust it, because his fight was coming up and we're not going to see Usyk for a while. A lot of people moved Usyk to number 1 after beating Tyson Fury, and I did it because I was like, he barely beat Tyson Fury. Like, it was very, very close, and I thought he won the fight, but it was a very close fight, right? Even though Tyson Fury is Tyson Fury. So I'm like, all right, if he dominated him, like, we're splitting hairs here because we're talking about the 3 best fighters in the sport, whatever.
But I gotta disagree with you, because it's like, I feel like, was Tyson Fury not the favorite in that fight?
Barely.
Okay, and the thing about it, they're two of the best heavyweights in the world. Yeah. Right. And so how would you expect that fight to go other than it being a close fight? So I never expected Usyk to just dominate him. Like, this is the best of the best. That's really a 50-50 fight if you think about it. And so I could see why people put Usyk number 1 if you look at his resume too. That's all I'm saying.
But before that, the fight with Dubois was competitive. Whereas I have Terrence Crawford absolutely destroying Errol Spence, and I have Inoue absolutely destroying Stephen Fulton. So it's not, for me, pound for pound is not as what have you done for me lately as it is like a combination of that plus body of work. The lead up to that matters to me. So if I'm leading up to it and I'm like, okay, Crawford had a best of the best fight with Errol Spence, and he destroyed Errol Spence. Inoue had a best of the best fight with Stephen Fulton. He destroyed Stephen Fulton. Usyk had a best of the best fight with Tyson Fury and won by a split decision. So Usyk, to me, just kind of remained at number 3 after that, which is fine. We're splitting hairs, whatever. And then I had Crawford 1 and Inoue 2nd. I could put Inoue at number 1, but I mean, after a TJ Doheny win, you know what it is for me? I think it's because how busy and consistent he is and how many times he fights a year. That's what could swing me in that direction.
So that's the only reason why I have him over Bud. And I actually like the way Bud fought against Madrimov. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, he didn't get the stoppage." You know,
He won
there
that
goes
fight
his
clearly.
streak. Yeah, he won that fight, and Madrimov's like a tricky fighter.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just the fact that Inoue consistently, and he didn't get it today, but he stopped TJ Doheny. I mean, he might have broke his back. Like, we don't know what happened today, okay? So he might have broke his back in that fight. For me, Inoue, the fact that he has names on his resume, he's cleaned out weight divisions, he has great finishes, and he's consistently fighting more than 2 times a year. That is impressive to me. He consistently does it. If Bud was more active, I think it's activity for me, really.
Yeah.
Then I would put him number 1 above Inoue. But because Inoue is a little bit more active, I have him number 1. I have Bud number 2, and I have Usyk at number 3. I think Usyk's performance was amazing against Tyson Fury because I think because he was the smaller man, a lot of people were taking Tyson Fury. I was right on my bet though. I took Usyk to win, even though it was very close. But that's another fight where I'm like, man, I would love to see a rematch in that fight. And they would both make a lot of money. But nonetheless, it's really hard. You could have any of those 3, 1, 2, or 3. But this fight, to me, it doesn't change where Inoue is for me on the pound for pound list just because he's active. He's going to be back in December. He fought
Hopefully.
and the people are before you get in on this.
Yeah.
I want to also say a lot of people are also like, well, who did he fight? Louis Neary was a tough fight. Marlon Tapales was a tough fight. Nonito Donaire was a tough fight. Stephen Fulton, I was riding hard for Cool Boy. I was riding hard for Cool Boy. And he has names on his resume. So I hate when people say, well, he doesn't fight in the States. He doesn't have to. Why would he?
And there's a rumor that he may next year.
Yeah, Frank Castle, Inoue is number 1, and there's no reason to fight in the USA. Listen, I wouldn't fight in the USA if I was Inoue. I would just stay in Japan, just stay at home, make my money. He's making a bag out there. He doesn't have to go anywhere. And I think for his legacy, maybe he'd want to fight in the States, but he doesn't have to. But I would love to see him back in the States because I think the last time it was like after COVID. During COVID, it was a weird time. But what were you going to say?
During, actually. And we talked about this, actually, if you missed it last week in our preview, about Inoue fighting the States, whether or not he needs to. And we're basically saying, like, hey, it'd be cool if he did, but he doesn't need to. But I also think he will. Like, there's already talk about him potentially doing it in Vegas next year. We'll see who. I wonder. That's the one where I wonder who the challenger is going to be, because I feel like that's important. I think if you're going to fight in America, it's like now I'm looking at, okay, is that the featherweight debut? Is that Shushu Carrington? I think if he's going to fight in December, maybe that's another fight in Japan. And then next year, the Vegas fight happens. We'll see how it ultimately, because people in boxing, like even the promoters, like Bob Arum said it here in the comments, Hustle Man. Bob Arum said next year Inoue would fight in Las Vegas in the interview after. I think Inoue's manager also said the same. People in the sport, they say shit. So that's their intent. We'll see if it actually happens. I'm sure that that's what they want to do, but ultimately they have to get things done, and we'll see. But to the point about the activity, I think that's what could sway me in Inoue's direction, because ultimately he's been much more active than Bud. I've said oftentimes here, Bud is probably the best in the world, but he fights once a year and hasn't fought more than once a year since 2019. And that was the year he fought, I believe, Amir Khan and Mean Machine.
I will say, though, I don't necessarily think it's Bud's decision to do that. I think it's like a business thing, like a promotional thing that he struggled with Top Rank and whatnot. Yeah. So I don't really think that's his choice to be like, I only want to fight once a year, because he was fighting, at least twice a year before. He was being more active. So I think that's more of a business thing. And hopefully we see Bud back sooner. And hopefully it's not next summer, because he is getting older. So that's the only thing. And Inoue is sneakily getting older too. Like, he's 31 years old. I literally feel like he was like 21 the other day or something like that. So, hopefully we see them a little bit more active in terms of Bud, because, Inoue is going to stay active, and maybe we'll see him again in December. But if he is to fight in Vegas, I think it makes all the sense in the world, considering the fact that Japan is pretty close to the West Coast. Vegas kind of considered the West Coast. It's like 4 hours away from LA if you drive. So I think that would be where the fight should be. But I there's something about fighting in New York when you think about legacy. When you think about like some of the greatest fighters of all time, they've all fought in New York, and I wonder how, in a way, the crowd would be there for him. I think
Please,
it would be great.
please. Bob Arum, fuck Vegas.
Yeah.
Bring this dude to the Garden. Honestly. Bring Naoya Inoue to the Garden. I just want to see what it looks like. All right. We have a lot of
Osmond
people,
telling me I look like shit this morning. it's 5:30 in the morning, okay? Like, what did you expect, Osmond?
And you just flew back
Yeah.
because you were doing sidelines, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's busy, So nonetheless,
CFL
but listen, we here.
season,
But listen, we're here. That's all I'm saying. I will say
How are the
though,
BC Lions doing, by the way?
they're doing good. They're doing good.
Okay.
A former Giants quarterback that you guys released. You don't know this? You're a New York guy. Okay, I'll let you think about it, and you can maybe guess. But anyways, he's back in the CFL. He was like the most outstanding player. And this is not a football podcast, nonetheless.
Although our football podcast that we don't actually air is a pretty good one. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, so this is very interesting. If Inoue moves up to 126 next year, match him up with Espinoza and Viggs. That'd be crazy. Espinoza is my favorite fighter right now in that division, no doubt.
Really?
Who would you have as your favorite in that division?
Let me go look at.
I also still have love for Ray Vargas. Brandon Figueroa is an interesting guy.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like Nick Ball.
Really? Okay.
That dude is fun to watch. Like,
what about Rebezi Ramirez?
Even I'm taller than Nick Ball. I mean, considerably taller than him. Actually, I'm not a tall dude, but I mean, I don't know what he is. I gotta look at who's my favorite featherweight. I think Inoue will beat anybody in this division. Although I will say this, TJ Doheny, he did look bigger than Inoue, and it made me think about, okay, maybe 126 is probably where this actually caps. We're talking about maybe it's 130 or whatever. But if he's 31 years old, realistically, like we're probably, if we see him at 130, it'll mean he hung around too long, because he's gonna spend, at least it looks like we'll get one more fight in this division before he ends up moving up to 126, which is where we ultimately want to see him. And I think that's where the bulk of the next phase and potentially last phase of his career is going to be. And I don't get the sense that Inoue is going to be a dude that just hangs around, right? Like, I feel like he's going to retire when he's still like near the top of his game.
Yeah. You know what? I always hear the rumors or potentially people wanting him move up to 130. But I think the biggest thing is like, there's weight classes for a reason. Like, you got to cap out at some point. And I think it would be 126. I don't know what's behind Brian. I don't know why you turned like that. But
it's my bag. I haven't picked it up after I dropped it yesterday.
You know what, Osmond, this is not the time to hate on the Raiders. First you said I look like shit this morning, and now you're saying it's talking about the Niners and the Raiders, which is the battle of the Bay. You know what, Osmond, we're gonna let you kick it on the show.
This is a response to Hustle Man also. So
I don't think they're gonna whoop the Chargers. I think it's gonna be a very tough year for the Raiders because we don't have a quarterback. And we have to watch Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell.
Let's get to makeshift 23. I have Brock Bowers on one of my fantasy teams, so pray for me.
Great. If only we have a quarterback with an arm. Anyways.
Makeshift 23. At this point in his career, Inoue is such a draw that he's going to make both the fans and opponents come to him as a standard. I agree with that. That being said, I also hope that he fights at the Garden. Favorite featherweight, to answer your question. I really liked Ray Ford. I still do, but I don't know. I would probably say Shushu Carrington right now.
He's definitely I think one of the guys that I have my eyes on in that. Listen, this is not a football podcast, but I will take CJ Stroud for MVP if you want to bet on that early on. Nonetheless, because football's starting this week. So Brian and I have a great football podcast that nobody knows about when we're off air all the time. I will say that whatever Inoue decides to do, he can do whatever he wants to do. And if he doesn't fight Sam Goodman, if he doesn't fight Akhmadaliev, very good chance that early next year, we're going to see him move to 126. One more fight at 122. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I think that's where we're at, and I think that next fight is in Japan. If I had to guess, look, I would love for it to be somewhere else potentially, so that like we don't have to do this on a Tuesday morning because it's not easy. But I'm not gonna complain because we get to do this. We have people who come out. Y'all are great. The comments have been great tonight. We're wrapping
I
this up,
love the
but
comments. Like
yeah,
tonight, it's the morning. The
yeah,
morning hasn't even started. I think I'm gonna go to sleep after. I don't think I will be able to.
yeah.
Listen, if I know this is not a football podcast, but the comments are too good. Okay,
Y'all are gonna
and
add like 10
it's
more minutes to this because of the football comments. Because Chantel can't help. Football's actually her favorite sport.
yes. Okay. So, listen, it's true. The Niner fans always say hey, not us. And they got the most bandwagon fans. Their fans only come out when they're good. And anytime it's the Battle of the Bay and the Raiders are kicking y'all ass, you got your fans leave early.
Mm,
Their fans leave early. I've seen it before many times. Alfred Miller, Ray
I like this
Ford from
comment.
my hometown. I was disappointed by his last fight. What do you think about Ray Ford?
I think he's really skilled. I don't like the strategy that he had last fight, and I think he said something along the lines of, "Oh, I should have listened to my coaches," because the way he was fighting Nick Ball, just like he was trying to mix it up with Nick Ball, when it's like this is what Nick Ball wants to do. Nick Ball is like 5'2", and he has to fight on the inside, and Ray Ford was kind of giving that to him, and he would have success when he fought at times off his back foot or countering or picking off Nick Ball from range, but he wasn't doing that enough. And ultimately, yeah, I think that's what cost them. Inoue versus Nick Ball would be a hilarious fight. That'd be such a fun. That'd be such a fun fight.
I think Nick Ball's super entertaining. Like
Yes,
he's a fun fight to watch, dude.
yes.
Like I like watching him fight.
He might be my second favorite featherweight. Nick, put some respect on Nick Ball's name,
For
bro.
Espinoza, for real, you're not showing no love to Espinoza.
No, I like Espinoza too. But
He's
I
my
like
favorite.
the Nick Ball. Listen, Nick Ball.
I'm
I
biased
like
though.
I
I'm
like
like so
listen.
biased.
Listen, short athletes are kind of my bag. You know what I'm saying? Like Nick Ball's great. He's 5'2". He's a featherweight. You know what I mean? Like there are dudes who fight at minimum weight. There are people who fight at minimum weight. I think Sinisa Estrada's taller than he is, and
Is he
probably has longer
5'2"?
arms.
Really? That's my height.
Like
He,
he is small and he is tough as fuck. Any Nick Ball fight, I'm there. That dude is fun. He's actually gonna fight Ronnie Rios, that's right, in Liverpool in
tough fight.
October.
Rios is a former Champ, isn't he? Ronnie
Rios
Rios.
is good. Rios is
Yeah.
good. That's a real fight. Quick scan at who else is gonna be on that card. Jack Rafferty, not a bunch of whatever, but it's a Frank Warren card, so it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be in the afternoon. I don't know if we're doing a live show after that. We will do a live show though. Might as
For
well
what?
plug this. Canelo Alvarez versus Edgar Berlanga is already next week.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I think I'm working the CFL game on the Friday. Luckily not the 14th. So we will be doing post fight for Canelo versus Edgar Berlanga, and of course that's Mexico versus Puerto Rico. So Brian's gonna be rooting heavy for Berlanga, I would figure.
No, I listen. I would like to see Berlanga win. He has barely a chance.
Hasselman, I'm pretty sure we're both from the Bay. So just saying, where did you come from? Because the Niner fans are always only there when they're really good. Trust me, okay? I went to every Battle of the Bay for like over a decade.
Had the first pick
until someone got shot and then they stopped doing it during the regular season. But we brought it right back.
I had the first pick in my fantasy draft last week and did not take Christian McCaffrey. So there's my Niners take.
Who did you take?
CeeDee Lamb. I had 3 wide receiver league.
Okay. Oh, okay.
3 wide receiver league. I should have probably mentioned that in the front. So I was like, I can't justify taking a running back here and then not taking a wide receiver till pick 24. I have 3 wide receivers. Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know if I would have done that.
I got Dak Prescott too, so I'm good. I got the stack.
So hopefully he could stay healthy.
That's why I didn't get Tyreek Hill. I'm worried about his health. But we're not going to talk about that. All right. So the next time you hear from us,
podcast.
the next time you hear from us will be next week. We'll be previewing Canelo Alvarez, Edgar Berlanga. I'm talking about some news. I am getting my wisdom teeth on this side taken out tomorrow. So we're definitely definitely not doing a show until early next week or mid next week.
Okay, you know what? We're gonna, before we end this off, I'm sorry, I can't get off any of these football comments here.
Oh my God.
He said, I never said y'all suck. Y'all do good every year. I give you that, but don't act like y'all faithful. Did you sit through a 2-win season in 2006?
I wish the Raiders were still in California.
Oh wait, this is hustle, man. Never mind. I thought you were Osman Nguyen because he came on, said I looked like shit, and then he started hating on the Raiders. And like, who are you, Osman? Like, you know what I mean? Come back on the show though. That was great.
Raider fandom is real. Alfred Miller here is an Eagles fan. I'm a former Jet fan, so there you go. That's
I think they have a good chance to win the Super Bowl, win it all if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. Okay, I'm gonna shut up. This is not a football pod. I'm still so excited.
I someone I know and work with just wrote a column about how he's betting Aaron Rodgers to win MVP, and I'm just like, oh, I can't. I'll be rooting for my fantasy team. Plural.
That's the only way. All right, guys. Well, we've had quite the post-fight show. We want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. We know it's hella early here on the West Coast. It's not super early on the East Coast, but nonetheless, anytime Inoue fights, we love it when you rock on with us in the morning. But nonetheless, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. You can also find us on the audio side. And thanks so much for hanging out this morning. We are going to have some more content for you soon. Before we get up and out of here, Bryan, final thoughts.
I have a Inoue Canelo Aristani Lara parlay. So I got the first leg of that today. Happy about that.
I can't wait to talk about that Aristani Lara fight.
Yes, next week. That Caleb Plant is returning. Stephen Fulton is returning, who we just talked about. He's going to be on that card. And Rolly Romero is also returning, which he'll probably win that fight. Maybe. But there's some interesting names on this PBC card, Amazon Prime. And Canelo Alvarez, Edgar Berlanga. So Mexico versus Puerto Rico by any means necessary.
I do feel like it's actually worth the pay-per-view because of the card.
It's Canelo.
I mean, Danny Garcia is also on the card.
Yeah,
like
as an underdog against Aristani Lara, like 2-1.
I could understand that because he was the best at 140 pounds for him. He was his best at 140. Like I never thought he was the best at like 147 when he was fighting at welterweight, and then he moves up after that Spence loss. And it's like the longest layoff of all time. And it's like, what type of Danny Garcia are we going to see?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most interesting storylines going into that entire card and going into that entire fight, as well as Lara too, because he's older.
Mm-hmm.
Lara's old, like sneakily old, but he's
really
40s. Good, dude. But he's really good still from the last time we saw him. So I just really, really think that I'm excited to see what that fight looks like. I'm excited to purchase the pay-per-view, to be honest with you.
TJ says Alicia fights soon too. There's a lot of good fights this month. Mentioned Sandy Ryan, Michaela Mayer earlier. There's a lot of good fights in September after August, other than Virgil Ortiz's fight, Terrence Crawford's fight, pretty quiet. We're getting a lot of good fights, at least in September. Lara's
Alfred Miller. Lara's like 60 years
41.
old.
I just checked. 41. But he has fought this year, which people forget. He knocked out Michael Zarafa. He's fought completely one-sided fights since 2019 would be my concern. So since the draw with Brian Castaño, that's probably the last time we've seen Lara in a competitive fight. Otherwise, he's just been knocking dudes out, some of them early, and he has one decision win, all one-sided fights. Gary O'Sullivan, Thomas Lamana, Canelo Alvarez's brother Ramon, who was 28-7, and I think fighting for a title. I think Lara's great. Seen him in person multiple times, covered him at Barclays Center and stuff. But we'll get more into that next week. Danny Garcia hasn't been in the ring for over 2 years. So I think that's probably the most interesting fight on the card in terms of competitiveness, though it's a fight that was supposed to happen last year at the Barclays Center.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be the main event, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Like they were supposed to headline that card.
I don't know what happened, but it got pushed back basically 14 months.
Yeah, so it's crazy because how long has Danny Garcia's layoff been? It's been like 2 years.
Just over 2 years.
It's crazy. So I'm excited. I can't wait till we break that down, guys. We are going to be doing a live show, and I think we could probably break down a lot of that entire card if you guys want us to.
Danny
Leave
Garcia
some
fought
comments.
once. Danny Garcia fought once, by the way, since the Errol Spence fight.
Yeah. So, oh my God, that's crazy. But guys, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We do appreciate you. Appreciate you. I can't even talk. It's so early. Hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure to follow us on our social media channels. We're going to be back next week. If you want us to break down that whole entire card, let us know. We will break down the fights that you want us to break down. And of course, we are going to be doing a post-fight show. If you're watching this after, leave some comments because we are going to read them. We don't always get back to you on the comments, but we see all of them. Okay, we're just busy. That's the only thing. But we see all of the comments, guys. We do read all of them, and sometimes we talk to each other about it on WhatsApp, and then we don't respond.
Yeah.
But we see them all, so we do appreciate
we work. We be working. Like you could also find the work we're doing is public. You could also just find this stuff.
We're not like like under a rock, like not doing stuff, like just sitting here on the couch. Except for starting Sundays, that's what I will be doing. But anyways, guys, I thank you as well for the football talk. Ozzy Inoue and me, we got beef, but you can come on the show anytime you want. I read your comments. and anyways, Brian, I'll let you have the final words.
Maybe an announcement soon on the first ever mandatory fantasy basketball league. We might do that.